Welcome to Italian Roots and Genealogy, where history lives in our blood. We explore the journeys, records, and family stories that connect Italy to the world. Because when you discover your roots, you don't just find names, you find yourself. And please check out our YouTube channel and our blog and our Facebook group and our great sponsor, Phil Italy. And today, my guest is Jennifer Anton, author building or renovating a home in Italy. And it's been 5 years since we spoke. So welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you again. So nice to be with you. So much has happened. I don't know how so much happens in such a short amount of time. Time flies.
Yeah, that's for sure. So just to catch everybody up, where was your family from in Italy and where did they move to?
Sure. So my mom is the one who's 100% Italian. Her father, it was from Lake Como, which is actually where I am right now, just up the house, up the hill from where my grandmother was born in Lake Como. But my grandmother was born in outside of Feltre in a town called Fonzaso, just outside the Dolomites. And so that's in the Belluno region. And that's where my book takes place. And so I spend a lot of time in Italy. I live, I'd say part-time here, part-time in London. And that's, yeah, my family. They moved. So my family moved from Lake Como. Well, some of my family is still here, but my great grandmother on that side moved before World War II in the 1930s. But my family from Feltre, Fonzaso area moved after World War II. So 1947 was when my grandmother came over and moved to Illinois.
Yeah, so your family's relatively recent to my family. I guess there's like 30
Yes.
something years difference. But we went north last year, first trip north, and we were looking for some place to stay the last day. I didn't want to stay by the airport. And Phil McCauley from Phil, Italy, sent us to Milano, which I think is across the lake from Como.
Yes, yes, Bolano's great. It's beautiful, and there's a beautiful gorge there, and there's a very
Mhm.
nice Lido, actually. We spend a lot of time at that Lido and great restaurants too.
And nobody there. No, not a lot of
It's
tourists.
super, no, not at all. Yeah, it's a great place to go. It's a great little secret spot that only Italians know about for sure.
Yeah, and we did go to see the waterfalls and walk up to the
Uh-huh.
and what was really cool about it, there's a whole town at the top of there.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful area that very few people know about. And actually, Morbeño is a little town near there where there's an amazing cheese shop, and it's just, I mean, that whole area is really special. If you get to Lake Como, it's worth going up to that area.
And I guess you could, if you don't want to be with the crowds, I guess there's a ferry that goes back and forth across too, right?
Yep, yep. That whole region is great. There's the Valtellina. You've got great wineries. You've got the spas in Bormio. It's an area that actually certainly a lot of Americans don't know about, but definitely worth visiting.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You
And
for getting there. Yeah.
yeah, well, it was just kind of like, put us someplace that's within an hour of the airport that
Yes.
you know, we have a nice day. Unfortunately, it rained most of the day we were there, but that was okay. That was fine.
Yeah.
So now, just recently, I guess you finally, I think you were talking about it for a
Mhm.
while, got the book translated into Italian, yeah?
Yes, yes. It was a long time coming. And it's funny, my daughter, who is now going to be 20 years old, she's like, Mom, it seems like everything's going so fast because I have all kinds of events that are happening now in Italy to celebrate the book. She's like, everything's going so fast. I'm like, it's taken your entire lifetime to get to this point. It took 14 years to write the book. I started writing it 2 weeks after she was born. When my grandmother passed away, I started researching it. Then it took until, 14 years until it was launched and published in Italian by Amsterdam publishers. And then it took 5 years from that to get it into Italian. And so now, yes, it is finally in it's kind of come back home and it's really being embraced. And that feels wonderful. I'm doing a lot of events throughout July for Sotto la luce della luna italiana. So under the light of the Italian moon, but in the Italian version. So I'm very, very happy about that.
So, how did you get that translated? Because I've had a couple of people ask me that they wanted to have their book translated into Italian, but they didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. So when we originally had the book come out in English, there was quite a lot of interest from a variety of publishers, Italian, Portuguese, Greek, Romanian, Czech. It ended up getting translated into Czech and Romanian by some pretty big historical fiction groups, and that happened right away. But the Italian one kept taking a while. And we originally had some offers, and then they just kind of slipped through. Just, the publishing world is one of those things. It's like any kind of new products, like certain things come in, and then all the attention and the marketing focuses on that, and then the other thing falls off the schedule. And so it was sort of just, unfortunate. And then just this past year, I actually met a woman who had had her books translated by one particular translator who had done an amazing job, and she had fantastic reviews, and he was just very much and understanding how to get the nuance of a book like this across. And so I worked with him and he launched it. His name is Ernesto Pavan, and he did a phenomenal job. And then we went about, having a bunch of beta readers. So we had beta readers who were, natural. Ernesto's obviously Italian, lives in Italy. But then we had a lot of beta readers just to make sure, because it's so hard. I mean, there's so many choices that are made in a translation. And a book like Under the Italian Moon that was, luckily so beloved by so many readers in English, I wanted to make sure that, that same feeling came across in Italian. I had to trust. So the beta readers were wonderful. And then we also had like a local sensitivity reader. So somebody from Fonzazo who could really, go through every detail and just make sure that every choice that the translator made was the right one. So we really put a lot of love into this translation, and really making sure that it was done to the spirit of my original English version.
Yeah, I'd love to write a historical fiction. And one of my favorite writers is Diana Giovinazzo. Vanazzo or
Hmm.
Vanazzi, yeah, right?
Yeah, she's great. Love her.
I'm
Fun.
gonna have her on again because her latest book is coming out. So it just came out, I
Hmm.
think.
Yep.
I always laugh because I always say that, she writes chick books, but they really aren't. They're really very
No.
fun. Uh,
Yeah.
and and I talked to her a little bit about it. And for me, I have a couple of ideas, but going about building characters to me that's
Hmm.
really, really tough, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, I write biographical fiction. So my characters came from real life. So they're based on real people. And in fact, 80% of it comes from true stories or research that
Mm.
I've done. And then sort of 20% of it is woven together with fiction. So I can't say that my creativity is pure, completely pure, because so much of it comes from actually the reality of truth. And I love to read historical fiction because I always learn something when I get it. And one of my favorite books was Beneath the Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan, and he was someone also who read my book. His wife and him read my book and blurbed it after they read it, which was really cool. But I love his book, and his book actually takes place in Lake Como, or north of Lake Como, and it is biographical fiction. Same thing, where he came upon the story, he wrote the story, and it's 80% true, and then kind of woven together with fiction for the parts that, like, you really don't know. You can't know everything that really happened. You can't be in every conversation, so you have to use a little bit of your imagination. And I think, yeah, he's done a really nice job with Beneath the Scarlet Sky. And that's definitely one that men really love. I was just talking to somebody about this today, because an Italian guy that I work with was saying, "Oh, I'll get it for my wife and my daughter." And I said, "Well, actually, a lot of men read my book and love it, because if you're really into your history and immigration and understanding your family, if you're from the Belluno region, these men, read it and they absolutely love the book." And I get a lot of emails from men, actually, saying, "This part of it really stuck with me. This really stood out. This really made me question things." And that means a lot. It means a lot to hear that. But I think you should write your book, Bob.
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, the story is really great. I want to do it about my fourth great grandmother, who's the Duchess Capricota, and the story is amazing because she she left her whole family to run off with this French officer. It was right around the time when Napoleon was, there,
Hmm.
and then she wound up eventually in Paris. She had gone back to Italy, but then went back to Paris, and there's this whole thing where she was, I think, on a stipend from the Napoleon government and stuff like that. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of history there. I mean, I love history, and that's what I like about Diana's books because she gives you a lot of history and a lot of things you didn't know before, but it's not boring.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, especially about, the King of Naples, who was this whacked out guy who used to go pretend that he was, you know, a fisherman or owned a or owned a bar and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
who would know this stuff unless you did all that kind of research? So now you're working on something new, right? Or is it almost ready to come out?
I am, but it's going to take some time. I mean, my books do take some time because this is not, my full-time job. So Under the Light of the Italian Moon took 14 years. It was definitely but it was one of those things where it took the time that it took. And I'm so glad because it's really been embraced by the people who've read it and beloved. So it's nice to kind of read all the reviews and just realize, every year that it took extra to get me to get it done, it was worth doing. But the next book is also historical fiction. It's going to be based off of one of the very minor characters from Under the Light of the Italian Moon. And it's actually based off of the life of a cousin of mine who helped the partisans, the Ghirlanda partisans, who, if anybody, probably a lot of people don't know about them, but obviously after September 8th, 1943, when the armistice was signed, the men had to come back who were fighting next to the Germans, and it became a very, very dangerous time in northern Italy. And the Nazis came in and occupied, and the men who did come back either had to go and work and partner with the Nazis, or they had to go hide in the mountains. And many of them became partisans and tried to sabotage and help the Allied forces win. My cousin at the time, Mary Bianchi, she was born in Canada to Italian parents from Fonzaso. They moved back somewhat unluckily in 1936. They had a grocery store and a tobacco store there, and she managed that. And because she spoke English, which she had to hide, she was able to help the British soldiers that were hiding in the mountains. And she was also able to create a network of supplies to be able to help her friends who were the partisans in the mountains. And the things that those partisans did to, help make sure that liberation was won for Italy is just so inspiring. And she actually was awarded an accolade from General Alexander when after the war. And she left behind 14 or 15 audio recordings of her experiences, which was such a gift to me. And so I've been obviously doing a lot of research, been spending time in the Belluno Partisan Museum, been spending a lot of time with a variety of historians to unlock, what exactly happened with this. And it's absolutely fascinating. These people were so young. And when fascism, just really came into play, it changed their lives. And some of them made it through and some of them didn't. And you had to make choices about what kind of person you were going to be. You had to make a choice of, if you were going to fight, if you were going to just pray, if you were going to try to get involved, but get involved in a way that didn't, impact your family. It was really tough choices. And I think it's really relevant to kind of what's happening in the world today. A lot of people have to make tough choices about, what they do, about their principles and everything. And they were not in a different situation. They were young people. And some of them suffered greatly. Some of them suffered the ultimate sacrifice because of their choices. And I think they were forgotten. So I'm not willing to forget them. And this second book is very much going to be about that. So it's not a sequel per se, but it's associated very much with Under the Light of the Italian Moon.
Yeah, that's something. I just interviewed somebody who's, I think it was her grandfather. He was a chef in a town in the north,
Hmm.
and he poisoned the Germans with marinara sauce. And I said, how did he get away with that? How did they not, wipe out the
Hmm.
town? And she said they moved the bodies. I don't know if they moved them
Wow.
to another town, but they moved them, and
Wow.
the Germans picked the wrong town, and
Mm.
they went into that town. And I mean, I know there was
Oh,
a lot of that stuff going on, but
yeah.
that was the fascinating story. Like I said, the fascinating part was that he actually got away with it. He did the
Yeah.
town basically got away with it. But yeah, one of the guys in my club was in the Italian class. He comes from up there too, and he knows he was born there, and I guess he was a young boy when he came to America, probably in the late 50s, early 60s or something like that. And he knows a lot of that history with the partisans
Hmm.
and the town and what happened. And I hear people say, well, if I was there, I wouldn't have done this, or I would have done
Mm.
that. And I'm like, no, you can't look at 80 years ago with what you think today because it wasn't like that. It wasn't that simple.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's never that simple. It's not that simple now,
Yeah.
it only gets more complicated. And I think ultimately it was a slow progression, in terms of how Mussolini kind of implemented his policies. It was a slow progression, and then it was a slow progression into the, part of the partnership with Hitler. And then what all unfolded, you know could people have seen that that was coming? I don't think so, right? And then obviously the changing of sides, and it was devastating. And I think, this there was a lot of suffering, particularly on the part, and I think a lot of the suffering that people don't think about are the women who were raising the families, who were left behind. Some of them, their husbands were abroad in America. In the case of my great grandmother, her husband was abroad in America. She was raising two children during Nazi occupation. Atrocities were happening every day to family members, to people around them. And I think that that suffering, when the war ends, nobody wants to talk about what happened because you just kind of want to move on with your life. And so I think because because of that, history tends to not remember, how things unfolded, and then actually try to change. And so unfortunately, I think that we need to remember those things. And I think that my grandmothers, for some reason, are trying to like say to me, don't forget, like, keep writing, keep pushing this, keep talking about this, keep telling our story, keep sharing the story of how we survived, of how we helped others, of hope, a story of hope and resilience, and humor. I think also, that's the cool thing, is that my family, no matter how difficult the times were, the women had this element of humor to them that is just great. And I think that's the other thing that I really appreciate, that to be able to get through some of these dark times, they actually, there were some light moments as well to it. So I think that's the great thing about Italians in general. We're resilient, and we're down to earth, and we don't always take ourselves so seriously. So we look at we look at some things to find funny.
Yeah, and I just watched the other day the Tom Hanks thing that he's doing about World War II, and it just happened to be the invasion of Sicily and Italy, and they touch on a lot of those points about how it unfolded, and really, the Italian army kind of like they were like, okay, well, what do we do now?
Hmm. Oh yeah, no, I mean they were in a terrible position,
Yeah,
absolutely awful.
yeah, yeah,
Wake
yeah,
up the next day and they're enemies. You're sleeping next to your enemies, and there was a lot of confusion, right? For 2 days or so, there was a lot of confusion, and then it was like you got to get out, or you're going to be a prisoner of war.
yeah. Hitler wasn't happy, and it kind of goes into that. By that time, Mussolini was a broken man. I mean, he everything just kind of had fallen apart. And then it talks about how I don't know, he had to meet Hitler for like 4 hours and just got berated for not for not having his army stand up and all of that kind of stuff. So now that we brought everybody head down, let's talk about
Yeah,
something really positive. So you're
yeah,
renovating a place in Lake
yes.
Como, right?
Yeah, yeah. So in 2017, we tried to buy my great grandmother's place on the shores of Lake Como, and it was quite complicated. If anyone has ever tried to buy their family's property back in Italy and somebody else owns it, you know that the family members, it gets super, super complicated legally. And so we ended up just buying a small apartment kind of up the hillside where we could see my grandmother's house from like the side view. And then a few years later, a property came available on the front with beautiful views of the lake. So we bought that. And sometimes on my Instagram, I kind of show life showing, the 30 feet of unobstructed views of the lake and the Alps, which is gorgeous and makes me very happy, which is just outside my window now. But we also just recently bought a small stone house closer to the lake, and we're renovating that. And that's been really fun to do. It really needed a lot of work. It had, orange carpets, and it's got these like crazy 1960s, almost Wes Anderson type bathrooms. So we've been doing that. But, we're very lucky in the sense that I have cousins here and we've been able to build kind of good relationships here. And I think that's critical. One of the pieces of advice I'd say is, try to get to know as many people as you can if you're going to do something like this, because we ended up finding some amazing people who are helping us in terms of builders and electricians and geometra, et cetera. And we're on WhatsApp with them. And so every morning, I live in London now, and every morning I get pictures and they show me what they're doing. And honestly, I can't believe how great it's been in the sense of how smooth it's been. So I feel very lucky in that sense. And I know a lot of people are thinking about doing it. Have you talked to some people who are thinking about doing it?
Yeah, a few people. I mean, I know one guy in particular, Dan Zangroni, he's in Calabria, and
Mm-hmm.
he's done his place, his family town. I think it may have
Mm-hmm.
even been one of his homes, one of the
Mm-hmm.
family homes. And I also have a connection with some other people in Calabria in Rosetto, and there are a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people know how to go about it. Another person I interviewed, he's renovating a palazzo in Vasto.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of people doing it. I mean, I'm just too old now. If I knew what I know now 30 years ago, I would have been there a long time. I have so many cousins there for my father's family. I didn't even know probably when we talked the last time. But our first trip over there with Letizia from Italy Rooting, my dad's first cousins were still alive. They were in their 90s, and his
Mm-hmm.
half first cousin brought us to their apartment in Torre del Greco. And like you, I would have had so many people that could have helped. I could have picked wherever I wanted to be within probably 25, 30 miles of Naples and had any number of people helping out. And
Yeah.
what really, really bums me out about it is that my grandmother died when I was about 10, but my godmother, my father's oldest sister, she lived into, I guess, 1977, 1978 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in contact with these people all these years and nobody
Mm-hmm.
ever said anything. I like
Yeah.
it makes me nuts. I can't tell you how crazy it makes me.
Yeah.
And so
That's
through my grandmother's father's family, Piumalo, I have cousins in around the Naples area, or have cousins in Taranto and Puglia,
mm-hmm.
and I even have some Sorrentino cousins in near Milan that I never knew about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, what
it's
I would say is, I think you shouldn't wait. I was 39 when we bought our first place, and like I said, the first place we bought, it was small. It didn't have a great view, but it was like a foothold, right? And then that got us here, and that, taught us about who's the notary that you work with, who's the realtor that you work with. You start to get to know people. But if you wait, the longer you wait, the longer it takes for you to understand the area, for you to meet the people, for you to kind of and so I would start small. I mean, there's an Instagram called My Cheap Italian Home, and they've got all kinds of things that are very, very affordable, that most people will be, or a lot of people, if they save, they can definitely pay cash for and figure it out. And it's not a huge risk, but it can change your life. I mean, truly, like
yeah, no,
just,
I know.
do
I know.
something different if you have the desire. So I'd say, you're saying you're too old now. I don't know about that. But yeah, like I said, I
Trust
was
me.
39. If I would have waited longer to buy a bigger, better place, I could have
Mhm.
done that. But you know what? I probably would have never done it at all. And not, you know what I mean? Like that's just how it works. It probably would have never happened. Same thing with moving abroad. If I hadn't have chosen to get my Italian citizenship and move abroad when I was 35 years old, we probably would have just stayed doing what we were doing, buying a bigger and bigger house in the US, and we would have never had the interesting lives that we've been able to have across Europe and spending so much time in Italy. So I
Uh,
say do it.
yeah, no, I wish I had done the citizenship a long time ago too. We lived in Bournemouth for 2 years in the mid 90s. I worked for Chase, and that was a great experience too, because like, I mean, because going to Europe is like going from New York to Florida.
Hmm.
It's a piece of cake. And we did a lot of things while we were living there that, had we not lived there, we would not be able to do. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's one thing to be a tourist somewhere. It's a whole nother thing to live someplace. I mean,
Hmm.
in England, at least they're speaking the language. But when you're a tourist, yeah, everything looks bright, nice and pretty and all of that kind of stuff. But living there is completely different than being a tourist, right?
Oh, it's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. No, it's very difficult. But you have, I think that we need to do things that are not that easy, right? We have to challenge ourselves to grow. So that's been a good experience. My daughter now speaks fluent Italian. She actually went to Ca' Foscari in Venice for a year, which is amazing because Italian schools, I think we paid 2,200 for
Yeah,
her
yeah.
tuition in Italy. Now she's finishing in the UK, which is 9,000 a year. So very different than US universities, great education, but very affordable, I'd say. And she's trilingual. She speaks French and Italian and English. So so yeah, I mean, I think you can choose a different path if you are just creative and certainly Italian citizenship opened that up for us. It opened up a path of options, particularly before Brexit. We were lucky that we moved here. We moved to the UK before Brexit, so we had settled status, and that, allowed us to work all over Europe and in the UK.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I remember
Hmm.
when we were going and the first advice that I got was once you're there, don't try to convert the money. It is what it is. Don't try to figure out this would cost this much in dollars. It doesn't matter, because I was still getting paid in dollars, and then they had, we had, they gave you the the difference and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I never forget that. That was the first thing they said.
Yeah.
Don't,
Well,
everything's more expensive.
cost
Don't try to convert it.
Costs here, well, so euros now, I mean, obviously we're in a smaller town here in Lake Como. And if I go to the bar sport, which is where you go and you have your coffee and all the old men are sort of playing cards there and everyone says hi to you and it's lovely. But I mean, I think I get, a couple of brioches and a few cappuccinos and a bottled water and it's like €5.50.
Mhm.
It's just, it's so cheap. And or a risotto milanese for, €9 or something like that. A pizza diavolo, €9. So the costs are for locals, especially if you're not in the big tourist areas, are incredibly affordable, which is nice if you decide to retire here.
Well, even in some of the tourist places, I mean, I know, like Milan and, Rome and places
Hmm.
like that. But if you go to where the locals go,
Yeah.
if you could find those places, it's fantastic. I mean, we found a great little place in Florence. Actually, my daughter and son-in-law found it just right around the corner from our B&B, and
Hmm.
it was all Italians in there. The menu was all
Hmm.
in Italian, you know, but I don't remember exactly what the meal cost, but it was really, really cheap and great food.
Hmm.
And on the way out, the men got grappa and the women got limoncello.
Yes, yes, so nice. I
Uh,
have a favorite restaurant in Florence. It's called Cafe Pitti, and it's right across from Pitti Palace. And again, super affordable, but they serve, I mean, my last supper would be their risotto with truffles and their burrata and a glass of wine. I mean, so affordable and just the most gorgeous food. Cafe Pitti, literally right across from Pitti Palace in Florence.
yeah, but and when we were we had a really great guide in Venice. I never thought I'd go to Venice, but we actually got on a gondola and all of that.
Ah, there you go.
So I asked her, I said, where's a good restaurant? And she said 1,000 pizzas, and I was like, 1,000 pizzas? But it was all Italians in there. It was like so
Yeah,
funny, and it
yeah,
was like
yeah.
really, really, really good. So I guess that's the other. If you have a guide, ask if you're going someplace and you want to ask the guide where to go because they're
Uh-huh.
going to
Or
send you
you know
to
what
where the
else you can
Italians
do? I
are.
have another tip. Follow the gondoliers.
Ah,
So when my daughter was going to university there, she would go to the places that the gondoliers were at. And by the way, they're big flirts, especially for,
I
an
really, I
18-year-old
would have never thought
girl in
that.
university. And a lot of them now are these young guys. So, a lot of the younger Venetian men are becoming gondoliers, and it's really cute. And they're just sweet. And we would sit and have conversations with them, and actually they even get a better price. Not
Oh.
that you get the gondolier rate, but follow the gondoliers because they will go to the right restaurants that are affordable and very authentic.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. What amazed me about there is how they know exactly where to push off the wall to turn
Mhm.
the boat. I found that just so amazing that because
Yeah.
if you see them, each one kind of hits that same spot, and the boat turns and they maneuver their way around those little canals. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really really cool. So two things before we go. First thing would
Uh-huh.
be, for anybody who's thinking about relocating and or renovating someplace, what advice would you give them for that?
I would really say like just do it. Like honestly, life is short and don't extend yourself, but just do it. Like you're not going to regret it. I really don't think I don't think you are. I think realize that there are a lot of like smaller towns outside of the bigger towns. Even if you don't want to do like Lake Como, there's other lakes that you can find just a sweet little apartment just to get started, and then you can always sort of sell and upgrade and so forth. So just get your foot in there and do it and meet people who can help you, who speak English and who can help you. And by the way, now with ChatGPT, you can compare the price. Am I
Mm.
getting a good price on this particular? This is the estimate. You upload the estimate. You use AI. It's made it so easy. So I would just say most important thing is just take action. Don't sit on your butt and do nothing because nothing's going to change unless you do it. So I would say try it. That would be
Yeah.
my advice.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, I've used ChatGPT for some things, but I started using Gemini AI for other things, and I putting in birth records and marriage records, and you have to give it this. My latest video is on that. You have to give it a certain
Hmm.
what to say in context, but
Hmm.
you could ask it like read, translate, and what's really important, give me the historical context
Yes,
because it'll
yes.
tell you what was happening in that time and why the
Hmm.
witnesses signed this way and why somebody put an X instead of their name and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So it's really useful. And also if you have photographs, put the photograph in there and it'll tell you the type of dress and the era and all of that kind of stuff. And so where can people find your book and if they want advice on, relocating or anything like that, where they find you?
So my book is Under the Light of the Italian Moon, or in Italian, it's Sotto la luce della luna italiana. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Feltrinelli in Italy, all the major retailers online. Um, and so yeah, or you can go to jenniferanton.com and sign up for my newsletter where I share information. I'll share there's a few events happening in Italy in July, and then I think we're going to be doing an event at the New York Public Library in October for Italian American Month, which should be great because I've been spending some time. I spent some time in Little Italy in the Bronx and in Little Italy in the north end of Boston, getting to know people there. So I'm looking forward to being back on the East Coast. But yes, and they can reach me, via email through my website and things like that too. And on Instagram, I'm Bold Woman Writing.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. Well, thanks again. I appreciate you being here. We'll have to not wait another 5 years before we talk.
Yeah, well, let's hope that the second book will be ready in like 1 to 2 years, and then I can come back for that. But I can't make promises. It has to be the right time. And right now, so much is going on with the Italian version of this book that it's sort of taking away from the second book. But I'm just really grateful. I'm really grateful. Most of all, Bob, I'm really grateful for you because you are encouraging people to remember their ancestors and to, bring that history forward. And it really does just enrich your life when you do that. So not everyone has that gene that they want to do it, but it can really change your, I'm a great example of how it's changed everything in my life, doing that research and from moving abroad, buying a place abroad, sending my daughter to university abroad. Like it really has enriched my life and connected me back to Italy. So thank you for all you do to do that for people.
Oh, well, thanks. I appreciate it.